All right, here we go. In three, two, one. Welcome back, guys. Did you forget about us? I hope you didn't. We're back in full effect. We were taking a little bit of a break, gearing up and saving all of our energy for football season because football season is in full effect now. I'm spending my Friday nights on the high school gridiron. We got college football going on Saturdays, and the NFL is now here. In week one, I probably watch more week one football. I watch pretty much every game this week. So I'm so glad football is here in full effect. The NFL did not let us down with several surprises and in results and just exciting football, exciting in several different ways for a lot of us. And for some of us, not so much. But we're going to get into all that and recap week one in NFL, talk about some fantasy players, some impacts, and talk about some overreactions we may have saw in week one. So glad you're with us. My Fantasy Podcast from myfantasysportstalk.com. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Reed. My co-host is the editor-in-chief, the president, the head honcho of this whole MFST shindig. He's Dan Shaw. How you been, Dan?
Well, that's a nice greeting to come into. I've been good. Football season, obviously a big time in my life. Today marks 1 month until the big I do for myself. So that's every time I think about it, it's coming closer and closer. So that's been taking up a lot of my time as well. But I've been well.
I thought about that today, Dan. I didn't realize it's exactly 1 month, but I thought about that day. I'm like, man, we're getting close because, we're already halfway through September. And sure enough, exactly 30 days. Dan is going to say I do. And we may have another co-host on the podcast. I don't know what's going to happen here when it's a split household like that. So we may have rule changes to the podcast. We may be recording at different times. We may be airing at different times. We may have to get a second seat next to Dan. I don't know, but we'll all work it out in the Schalk household. It'll be glorious. We're also joined today by our man from Below, who probably wants to stay on the D-Lo this week. And rumor is he may just move to Baltimore. He's been threatening. I've heard rumors that he's threatening just move to Baltimore altogether. He's done. He's throwing his hands up. But you do have reason to be excited, Ryan Thomas of the Thomas Take Podcast, I believe, because your guy is finally going to get his chance. Let's just reset. We're going to hit the reset button like it's old Nintendo, like it's 8-bit Nintendo NES. Hit the reset button, and we'll start all over in Buffalo.
That is what is taking place at One Bills Drive. The Bills are starting Josh Allen. The Josh Allen era starts now. We put that debacle that was last week in the rearview mirror, and we roll with Josh Allen, the present and the future. How about that?
So from what you saw at the Baltimore game, that's not the only problem, though. I mean, that's not going to solve a lot.
No, that's not the only problem. And I fear that being that was week one, we see teams go head-to-head, and sometimes we see upsets. We see teams, these teams aren't really – they fully don't have their feet wet yet. I think there could be more problems to come for the Bills, unfortunately. For my Buffalo Bills, the offensive line, defensive line, really all three phases of the game.
What was the final score again? I don't even remember.
47-3.
Yeah.
So, yep. At one point, it was 7-0. So just let that sink in.
A lot of games start out that way, Ryan.
Right.
And then it all plays out.
Right.
So
it was a tough one.
But here's my problem, or I just not necessarily a problem we don't know yet, but it's going to be interesting, and it could cause a dilemma because the team is not very good. Like you said, offensive, defensive line, just not much going on. Is this going to reflect negatively 3 weeks down the road on Josh Allen when the team is still losing, not looking good? Are fans going to lose faith in him and be like, we got to draft a quarterback again? I mean, I don't want it to come to that, I mean, give the kid, even Peterman, not thrown into a great situation, but let's, I hope the kid gives time, they give him time because I think Allen is going to be really good for you guys.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's a topic that I talked about on my podcast today, actually, earlier this afternoon. I talked about how, Josh Allen's going to be the starter, but if things don't go according to plan, which they probably won't, I don't see the Buffalo Bills winning too many games this year. What fans have to realize is the one good thing about Josh Allen playing right now is that he's going to get experience heading into 2019, where the Bills' current salary cap situation is probably the worst salary cap situation in the league, but luckily it only works for 2018. It only handicaps them for 2018, 2019. They get a lot of money coming back to them. So hopefully they're able to spend that money wisely, use their draft picks wisely. Being that they have so many needs, I hope we don't see them trade up in the 2019 NFL draft because there's so many needs on this team that they need to land all the picks that they can.
Something just struck me, guys. All three of our teams lost this week. I don't know. I know it hurts you, Brian, because I watch your podcast, man. You were so heavily invested in the Buffalo Bills. Bless your heart, bless you. But Dan also with the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't know what Dan expected. Me with the Tennessee Titans, I'm just kind of, we'll see what happens. But I'm not particularly confident in Mike Vrabel. I'm not particularly confident in Marcus Mariota, and I think we kind of saw all that come to fruition in a loss that they probably shouldn't have lost in Miami, although horrible conditions. But coming off a playoff season where you actually won a playoff game, my expectations for the Tennessee Titans are not great for the future. And I don't know how Dan feels about the Dallas Cowboys, but his Dallas Cowboys just kind of did nothing in Carolina this past weekend. So how's things in Dallas, Dan? What's your outlook and how you feel about week one for your Cowboys?
I could sum it up in 4 words. I hate Dak Prescott.
It's got to that point, huh?
Yeah, I mean, year 3. This is year 3. I had high expectations. It's been tough for me just because I haven't given Dak a fair shake, since he took over for Tony. I was a big Romo fan, believer, still am. I think he can come down to the booth right now and play better on the field than Dak could, the way he did against Carolina. But I was shocked. I mean, he was. I put on social media. He just loves throwing to feet, and feet can't catch. And he was coming up short pass after pass. It was bad to watch. It reminded me of when I was younger watching Chad Hutchinson play for the quarterback for the Cowboys, and it was a short clip of it, but it wasn't a large sample size. But Dak looked, dreadful out there. Defense looked good. I was happy with the way the defense played. Defensive line, DeMarcus Lawrence was a beast. The linebackers are talented with Van Der Esch, the rookie, Sean Lee, Jalen Smith. They have talent, and the secondary played out of their mind. So I was happy with the defense. It's just offensively we couldn't do anything, and when defenses are going to stack the box and make Dak beat them. There was 10 in the box at times. They were just man covering every single receiver. They didn't put a safety over top. The safety was up front at the line of scrimmage. Shaq Thompson, who is kind of that linebacker safety hybrid, he was up blitzing basically every play. So the running game wasn't there, and Dak couldn't beat him with his arm. And
that's what I was gonna say, Dan. There's 2 points I want to make there. Number one is what I said when we did our Pick'ems piece about how I feel about the Dallas Cowboys is that year 3, the more time and the more film gets out on Dak Prescott, the less effective he's going to be. I truly believe that. I love Dak. He's a great guy. I saw him in Mississippi State. He's just a superstar, and nothing about that changes. But I don't. The more I think he hit the NFL with a wow factor, an impact factor that we don't know how to play this guy yet, but they figured it out. And I'm not sure he's ever going to be that true pocket passer. So I think the more time, the more film gets out on Dak Prescott, the less effective he's going to be, and that will continue to be the way throughout time. The second part of that is the Ezekiel Elliott factor. Is why I was high on Zeke because I like the offensive line. I know they're going to feed him so much, but I truly believe that Dallas is going to be down in a lot of games this year. And when they do stack the box like that, if you're a Ezekiel Elliott owner, then you're not going to be happy about the way this Cowboys offense plays out this year.
It's definitely worrisome. I didn't expect to see what I saw on Sunday from the Dallas offense. Their line, obviously without Travis Frederick, you don't know if he's going to return. That's a big hit. Joe Looney's a good backup to have on your team that can fill in, but to ask him to start at center, it's not something that he's accustomed to. And the Carolina defensive line, with Kawan Short and Julius Peppers was still making plays. They had some talent up front. So, Dallas isn't going to see that type of defense week in, week out. But they got to show that they can dominate the line of scrimmage, and they didn't do that week 1. And just Dak one more time. When he played as a rookie, I scout the NFL draft pretty heavily, and I didn't have a good grade on him. I didn't think he was an NFL quarterback. I thought he was wildly inaccurate. And then he came out as a rookie, and he actually looked good. But he was given a lot of time. He obviously, that running game was established every game.
He was figuring the game out as defenses were figuring it out too. So he had success.
But his accuracy has just completely gone away. I mean, there's times when he wasn't even being pressured and he was just missing wide open receivers. And the receivers probably got a lot of blame, but they were open at times. And the only one that Dak could hit, we were talking about it on Sunday, Brandon, is Cole Beasley. And it's because he's so damn short. It actually worked in his favor, those ankle passes. So I need to see more games from him this year to fully hate him the way I did after week 1, but it's not a good start.
So let me ask you, as far as the Cowboys personnel and coaching staff, is it potentially there to make Dak a better pocket passer, a better quarterback? Is there going to have to be a change made schematically or personnel wise to make this guy a better quarterback, or is it just going to have to be a situation where you play this year and you look for a contingency plan?
I'm always in the neighborhood of wanting continuity and keeping your coaching staff together. And Dallas has actually done that. They've, Jason Garrett has been there for years.
And do you like him? Just I don't know if I ever asked you, but how do you feel about him right now? Do you like him as a coach?
I'm souring on him quickly. I was always okay with it. I thought he did a decent job.
He's Jones's golden boy. It seems like Garrett is the golden boy.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of Rod Marinelli over everybody else on that staff. I think what he does with such little talent on defense over the past few years has really stood out to me. He gets his players to really play. But offensively, it looked bland on Sunday. They were supposed to get Tavon Austin involved constantly in the offense. I think he was on the field for a total of like 5 or 6 plays total throughout the game, and the offense just it was stagnant. So I like the continuity that we've had, but they haven't gotten it done lately. So whether it's a change at head coach, offensive coordinator with Scott Linehan, I think if they're going to be on thin ice if they don't produce a playoff berth this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a clean house after the season if they do miss the playoffs. But that's what I like with the Cowboys, because I know they can attract the coaches, and there's nobody going to be turning them down the way Buffalo gets turned down constantly by high profile coaches. But I'm just worried that what type of decision is Jerry and company going to make, because with head coaches, they don't always go with who they should, or who I guess they should go with, or that big name coach. They want to get that kind of puppet master the way they can get Garrett to work behind the scenes in favor of the Joneses.
So let's talk about new head coaches real quickly. And 2 in mind, Mike Vrabel, who I touched on with the Tennessee Titans, and Matt Patricia with the Detroit Lions. What grade would you give those guys, Dan?
Well, I don't know if you saw this. All new debut coaches lost their first week, 0-7. So those two, Vrabel, they were at least in the game. Patricia just looked lost.
It was nasty conditions too with Tennessee. If you want to give them a pass for that, I guess, but.
Yep, and but with Patricia, I don't know if you watched the broadcast, but they kept showing him, just him, and he was just like,
he looked confused. He looked confused and pissed. He looked like a guy in the billiards bar that was ready to beat someone's ass.
He just looked out of his league, and you don't expect to see that from a Bill Belichick disciple like that. He was not ready. He was not prepared. Did you see the thing about the Belichick
disciples? The Bill Belichick disciple coaches have done horrible in the NFL.
You expect them to at least have some semblance of a game plan where a rookie quarterback isn't going to put 48 points up on you in his first game ever. I know Darnold didn't do everything, but he did look like a veteran out there in his first game after that first pass.
So, so what you kind of saw, it unraveled a lot quicker for Detroit and Matt Stafford than it did for Tennessee. But what you're seeing there is kind of way I felt about Tennessee going when they made the hire of Mike Vrabel. What did I tell you, Dan? What was my famous quote there?
Bonehead ex linebacker.
Yeah, to run an offense in a critical year offensively for your quarterback specifically. Yeah. Now, I guess Matt LaFleur had success, but something is still not clicking. And I would have liked to see a more offensive-minded hire there in Tennessee. And I don't know. We'll see. My expectations are not very great this year. So we'll see. But so, Ryan, what kind of stuck out to you? What do you, outside of your Buffalo Bills topic, what kind of stuck out to you from week one that you want to talk about or hash out?
I got to say, a storyline that's not really being talked about enough with the Detroit Jets game is that Jets defense. I thought the Jets defense looked completely different from last year.
Number one scoring defense in fantasy in our league anyway.
Right. And guys like Jamal Adams, that dude is going to be a cornerstone on that defense for a long time. Some other things I liked, I stayed up late Monday night. I wanted to tune into the John Gruden show, and that was a very good game for Oakland at the start. But the Rams defense as well. I think those two defenses might end up being, by the end of the year, they might be two of the top defenses in the league. Matt Stafford and Sam Darnold looked like the veteran. And then you go to the Rams side of it. Once their defense started clicking against the Raiders, their offense just exploded. So I'm excited to see how those defenses do as the season wears on, the Jets and the Rams.
What I kept thinking watching that Oakland and Rams game late Monday night is I kept thinking about the Chicago and Green Bay game. Like, folks, this ain't over. Don't let this halftime score fool you. It is not over. And the Rams did dominate from there on out. I'm in favor of the Rams D this year. As far as the fans in Oakland booing John Gruden or just the team in general, I can understand that because you got to imagine, how do you feel if you're Oakland fans? Because you get Chucky, you get John Gruden, you get a head coach, but guess what? You only got him for 2 years and the team is bouncing. Okay, so it's kind of like win now, do something now, and if it ain't getting done, I don't care if it's week one or not. Then boo, because why should they care? Plus, they're one of the more obnoxious fan bases as it is outside of Philadelphia, who is booing the Super Bowl champs on the night they got their rings, by the way, too. But you got that. And then also the Martavis Bryant situation. I heard that they're probably going to re-sign him if they haven't already. So they cut him only to re-sign him. So they're needing help there. Just a lot going on. And Aaron Rodgers, what he did Sunday night, I thought we were talking on the MFSD message board, I thought it'd be 2 weeks. Some guys were saying, maybe the season. It looked bad. He was carted off for Pete's sake. Okay. But he came back and won the game, ended up with 27 fantasy points in our league. So, just an amazing, first week. And I did watch a lot of it. So, Dan, what else you want to add to it as far as just wrapping up week one? What else? Surprises, shocks, whatever. Pittsburgh, Cleveland played to a tie. So Cleveland didn't lose.
Yeah, one thing the Bills should have never got rid of Ryan Fitzpatrick, as he had his best game ever as a pro. So obviously the Bills should have built around Fitzpatrick and Fitz franchise and watch him lead him to glory. But instead, he's over in Tampa lighting up the Saints defense that was actually good last year and was supposed to be even better this year. And they look terrible, which is good for my fantasy team because that means I'm going to have Drew Brees throwing nonstop.
That is good. But Ryan Fitzpatrick has produced everywhere he's gone. I'm a witness to that. He's just produced. I mean, I don't know. He just gets the NFL game. He is a journeyman, and he produces. But I was looking at our MFST fantasy league this week, and 6 of the top 12 fantasy producers this week came from that game. Tampa Bay and New Orleans. They all came from that game. Alvin Kamara had a great game. Drew Brees had a great game. Mike Evans had a great game. All those guys are on your team, aren't they, Dan? Or at least I know 2 of them.
Yeah, you're just naming off my team. Oh,
Dan, Dan had a great week, although he wasn't the top scorer of the league, guys. I'm talking to all you guys. DDT, Dylan Davis, Tirado, Casey Birch, Malachi David, all you guys listening from myfantasysportstalk.com. Told you I had a beast of a team. Look at that. Look at that. 147. 147.
We're up here with our team, and then you gotta go. That's where the Thomas take is. That's hide your face.
I'll call my shot right now and call out the mediocre Baltimore Ravens. So if the Ravens are mediocre, that means Buffalo is just downright awful. But Thomas Samuel Ball is going to get a Thomas take beat down this week.
You got to score more than 74 points or whatever you scored. It was not good.
It was not a good week. Matt Ryan, he's got to redeem himself.
Dude, I doubled your score. It's not a good showing. Not a good showing. I don't know. We got some time. You better be involved in some of these trade offers with the Purtons and Casey Birch. Casey Birch and the Purtons, they're trade machines. They're hungry for it. So go after their talent.
If Nick Purtons would have traded me David Johnson for nothing, I would have been pretty thankful for that too.
Yep. Hey, don't comment. I'll just sit back and watch. Take me to glory again. Because Kenyon Drake, I won last year.
Kenyon Drake's an RB2 to Frank Gore right now.
That's for the next show.
But will that continue? I don't know, man. I don't know. But we're going to drop another podcast. We're going to answer you guys' mailbag questions. So you're seeing this one. Stay tuned for the next podcast. We'll be dropping probably Saturday. Want to get you guys mailbag questions in and answer as much of them as we can. We're going to hear from our guy, Nick Purtons. But so I've kind of hit on all the surprises I want to talk about. I mean, what do y'all think about? You hadn't really talked. Ryan, what about that Pittsburgh-Cleveland game? I want to get your feeling in it. Is Cleveland really going to step up and play at a fairly competitive level this year? Or did Pittsburgh just have a horrible game in a slop fest where they committed 6 turnovers to Cleveland's 1? I mean, how do you see that? It was a tie, what happened?
It was a tie. It was a 21-21 game. Had Baker Mayfield been in, I think Cleveland would have won that game. Tyrod Taylor, 15 of 40, 197 yards and a touchdown. The yards for Tyrod Taylor, 197 yards for Tyrod Taylor is like a Drew Brees, 280, 290 to 280 to 300.
But he did add about 70 or so on the ground too, didn't he?
On the ground, right. But I think if Baker Mayfield was in that game, and I'm not the biggest Baker Mayfield guy, but I think Cleveland would have had a much more consistent passing attack. There was also a very odd miscommunication, according to Hugh Jackson, in regards to Josh Gordon's playing time. They said that he played too much, that they didn't want him to play that many snaps, but there was a miscommunication as far as how long he was in the game. Cleveland is just one of those teams that they just can't get out of their own way. As much as their defense, I think their defense is extremely impressive. Their front seven, Myles Garrett I think he's the pass rusher of the future. I think I think he should be as highly rated as J.J. Watt ever has been or ever will be. This guy is going to take over the defensive end spot for the NFL. He's one of the faces of the league, in my opinion. But their offense with Tyrod Taylor, I'm just not sold on the Browns, making the playoffs or being a contender. I think Baker Mayfield steps in for Tyrod at some point this season.
I can agree with that. Because Baker Mayfield has looked sharp through Hard Knocks, through early training camp, through preseason games. He's just looked sharp. He's looked like probably the man of the future and probably worth the number 1 pick. So I don't think they screwed it up in that regard. But let's face it, they still tied with Pittsburgh while Big Ben committed 5 total turnovers. The team committed 6, and they still couldn't beat Pittsburgh. So that's why I'm just kind of looking at this a different way. I think they will be more competitive. They're going to be better than last year, which to me means 4 or 5 wins. I'm sticking with that. Pittsburgh played just a horrible game. They need to get it together. And Le'Veon Bell was sitting back laughing. If Pittsburgh would have lost that game, Le'Veon Bell probably would have been signing a check right now. So we'll see how that plays out. But something was missing. Maybe it's Le'Veon Bell. Maybe it's not. Maybe Big Ben is shedding that weight. He shed some of his Big Ben status. I don't know. But 6 turnovers to Cleveland's 1 is not going to get it done. I'm not totally convinced that was all Cleveland's defense. I think weather had something to do with that. Just week one flukiness. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think I wouldn't overreact to Cleveland tying and being a lot more competitive this year. I don't know how'd you see that game, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think weather conditions also played a factor in some of the numbers that you guys are talking about. But that aside, I mean, I think both teams played rough. I mean, the Cleveland defense stepped up. Their offense didn't, there were factors on both sides of why they tied. But I think week 2 is going to be more of a outlier of how Cleveland will perform because they are playing that New Orleans Saints defense that, just got ripped apart by Tampa Bay. So if you're going to find out if Tyrod is the guy this year for Cleveland, depending on how he does against that defense, in my eyes. Play Josh Gordon this week.
Are you? You have him.
Yes. Yeah, I think I am.
You're gonna play him. You're gonna play him at the flex this week?
No, as my wide receiver too.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Good to know because I have him in a couple other leagues. We'll see. All right. So that does it as far as in-game action. Let's just talk about some of the fantasy performers this week. As Dan mentioned before, we talked about Ryan Fitzpatrick just went off. He was the overall leading scorer in our league this week with, I believe, 52 fantasy points. That's what he had, 52 fantasy points. So do not expect that to continue, especially because they are going against Philadelphia this coming week. And we didn't talk about that. I believe that the Philadelphia-Atlanta game on Thursday night to kick off the season could be a preview of the NFC Championship. I know it was an 18-12 game, but that is what the NFC Championship game probably should look like with some good defenses. And I think Atlanta's defense is improved to hold this defending Super Bowl champs to only 18 points. The Atlanta's problem is just going to be play calling. I mean, how many times were they stopped inside the 5? Just play calling, and they had the same problem in the red zone last year, so they got to work that out. But let's talk about fantasy real quick. Fitzpatrick, Tyreek Hill went off. James Conner, Deshaun Jackson out of nowhere, Randall Cobb out of nowhere. He's still got some left in the tank. And Saquon Barkley had a really good rookie debut as far as fantasy point wise. So fantasy performers, what do we think, Dan? Anything shock you? Someone to look out for this particular year, or did someone kind of let you down and I don't know, based on team scheme or just fantasy production? What happened?
Well, a guy that Ryan has that I've been hyping up all off season is George Kittle. He was on Ryan's bench, which is a good fantasy owner decision there. But yeah, I'm high on George Kittle. I think he's going to be one of the main targets for Jimmy G, and he ripped off 90 yards against a Vikings defense that is pretty darn impressive. So I think you're going to see more of that. He was probably a hot waiver wire addition this week. But he was a guy that I've had my eye on in a lot of leagues, and I even offered Ryan Thomas a trade. He said he would only take Josh Gordon for him, so let me offer this to you right now, Ryan. Josh Gordon for George Kittle. Let's do it. Straight up.
You send it.
Ryan's got to throw in a kicker too, though, because Dan is total. He's on his second kicker, and he's down 2 points this year from the kicking position.
I always go with the Cowboys kickers, and for some reason they cut the second best one in NFL history, so I still can't get that.
Did he sign yet? I heard the Jets were this close to signing him. Did he sign?
Yep, nope, free agent. It's a shame.
Okay, so Dan Bailey's out there, and I don't know who the bum you picked up was, but he got you negative too. So, fantasy production, what's going on, Ryan?
I said the last time I was on this show, I said buy low. You made a great hashtag for me. I can't remember what it was word for word, but it was go with the flow. I think it was go with the flow, buy low, and be low. I bought low on quarterbacks. I drafted Matt Ryan, maybe one in the 120s, I want to say. If I'm not mistaken, I thought I drafted him that late. And, I mean, the play calling in Atlanta, I think that's really the key to my fantasy season in the MFST league. If Matt Ryan is not getting me 17 to 20 points a week.
What did I tell you, Ryan? I told you he's going to frustrate the hell out of you.
I'm trying in another league. I get a 10-team league. I have Alex Smith, who I'm starting this week, and I'm benching Matt Ryan. this week I did pick up in the MFST league. I picked up Sam Darnold. I'm hoping maybe he can catch the Carson Wentz lightning in a bottle rookie magic, which so far so good. Maybe he's my starter as the season wears on. Maybe we'll see.
You would think Matt Ryan with the weapons and a pretty wide open offense like they have, like he would be a fantasy producer, but he throws 1 or 2 picks a game. He just misses throws. They have horrible play calling in the fourth quarter and in the red zone. It just never, ever just completely clicks. Now, Julio Jones has his games, but for Matt Ryan, he hovers around that 18-point margin. If he has a 30-point game, you had a great game and probably the best that Matt Ryan is going to have all season long. As far as fantasy quarterbacks this year, guys, maybe I'm out of line here. Maybe I'm not too far off, but let me get your take on this, Dan. I believe Patrick Mahomes could possibly be the best fantasy producing quarterback in the league this year.
I'm going to go ahead and say no to that, but I am high on Mahomes. He was my number 1 quarterback coming out of the draft in 2017. I think he's a gunslinger. I called him the next Tony Romo, which is high praise coming from me. So I'm a definite believer in Mahomes. But, one thing that was in our draft guide that we put out, they have the 32nd strength of schedule against the pass. So I think you're going to see that ultimately start to kind of even out. You're going to see Kareem Hunt a little bit more involved. For some reason, Andy Reid just occasionally hates running the football. And until the last 2 series or something, Kareem Hunt had about 10 touches. It's not going to happen every single week. Mahomes is good. He's going to put up numbers. Number 1 fantasy quarterback, I don't think that's going to happen. Top 10? Yeah, I can see that.
I would say top 5 at least.
I think top 5 through the fact that he's got players that can create opportunities. Guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Hunt, Sammy Watkins. I know, Dan, he is an injury-prone player, but he's got guys around him that can make opportunities. I think Mahomes could have a similar season to what Deshaun Watson did in that stretch run that he had last year. Just hopefully he stays healthy.
I just think he's solid. I think he's the guy. They obviously shipped Alex Smith out of town, and from the moment he landed in Kansas City, it just seemed like that they fell in love with him, and he was going to be the guy. And Week 1 performance did not let me down. He probably finished with us probably like 10th in our league in total fantasy production with 31 points. So. I mean, I think he's going to be really good. I would definitely say top 5. I'm willing to go that high for sure, guaranteed, because I like the way he looks and the weapons he has around him. So what else fantasy-wise? Like I said, 6 of the top 12 guys in our league were from that Tampa Bay New Orleans matchup, so things are a little bit skewed that way. Case Keenum in Denver. Emmanuel Sanders is up there. He scored a lot of points. And Philip Lindsay was probably the hottest waiver wire pickup this week, guys. Is that right? I think he was the first off our board anyway.
Ex-Colorado Buffalo representing there. So I like Lindsey. I grabbed him in a couple dynasty leagues this year. I didn't expect him to have such a role week 1, but I think he's the best back in that backfield. You can read my draft profile on him when I gave him a day 2 grade in the NFL draft, and he went undrafted. So I've been hyping him up. I've watched all 4 years at Colorado. He was only behind Rashaan Salam in Colorado rushing yard history. And he was the leader of that team. Not only is he a great running back, but he is his work ethic and his leadership ability set him apart from everybody else. Big fan of Philip Lindsay.
Ryan, were you targeting anybody this week to pick up, or did you pick up anybody? I had to take a look here.
I changed kickers. Stephen Hauschka was my kicker for the Buffalo Bills. I went with, I don't even know who I picked up. You'd have to
Robbie Gould, San Francisco.
Robbie Gould. Okay, San Francisco. And Philip Lindsay was a guy that I was looking at. Unfortunately, I did lose the waiver for his services, being that I have Royce Freeman. I still think Royce Freeman's the lead dog in that backfield. I think he's gonna turn it around. They're going to split it, but ultimately, I think Royce Freeman's the guy that can share the workload. I think he's going to get the workload as the season wears on. I see him as similar to not as big, but similar to like a Blunt type to where as the season wears on, I think he's going to get some solid weeks in. A guy that I really like for all the Melvin Gordon owners out there is Austin Eckler. I'm very happy that I have him on my bench because whoever has Melvin Gordon, if Melvin Gordon were to ever go down, Eckler's probably one of the top pickups that week, or would be if he's available. And even
that
so,
guy's on this show
with
Dan Shaw, the owner of Melvin Gordon.
even so, even with Melvin Gordon in there, it looked like they're using him in a wide variety of ways in that Chargers offense. So that's a guy that I like. I think people should go out and see if there's an opening there to get him.
And I see Dan and I were battling for the first tight end pickup this week because I need one. Because, okay, first of all, folks, I scored 147. Did I mention that? 147.5 this week. Top producer in the league. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we'll throw another shout out for that. But I've already had Marquise Lee go down before the season even started for the year, gone. And then Greg Olsen again goes down. He's on the IR, so I'm having to find myself a tight end again. And me and Dan were battling for tight ends. So Dan fell for the Will Dissly act. He thinks he's going to be the guy, huh?
Well, it's just kind of like a backup. I think he's my third tight end on my roster. So
you got 3 tight ends on your roster?
Yeah, so I traded away in order to acquire David Johnson. I left myself pretty thin at that tight end position. So I have O.J. Howard, I have Antonio Gates, and now I have Will Dissly. I don't plan to really ever play him. I think that 105 and a touch that he had week 1. It's not going to happen every week. He did it on 3 receptions. But if Nick Vannett goes down, then I think Dissly becomes a must-own type of tight end in fantasy. So why not have him? I had the roster space. Why not go for it?
I've ended up picking up Jesse James. Jonnu Smith with Delaney Walker went out for the year too. So Jonnu Smith was picked up for the Tennessee Titans. I went with Jesse James because it seems like to me, like when I watch Pittsburgh, he's always on the field. He's always active, so I think he'll get targets. So he'll do okay. So I'm never big on the tight end position. It is what it is. So we were kind of battling. So several tight ends were picked up there. As far as our waiver wire, before we wrap this up, guys, the guys who are still available, and this is how little confidence people even have and how much of a fluke people thought that first game was in New Orleans, is Ryan Fitzpatrick is still available in our waiver wire. No one's even trying to pick him up. He scored 52 last week, and he's still sitting on the waiver wire. Other names that are on our waiver wire still currently after the hot Tuesday free agency pickup period is Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, let's skip through some of it. Trubisky's still out there. Dante Pettis of San Francisco. Willie Snead from Baltimore. A few kickers. Jakeem Grant from Miami. Jalen Richard of Oakland, who did get work in that game Monday night. So there's some guys out there. A lot of kickers, a lot of quarterbacks. We'll see how it plays out. A lot of defenses, but there's still some guys out there. So we'll talk more about that in our next podcast when we break down and answer some of your fantasy questions, specifically about trades and free agent pickups and who should I play, this guy or that guy. So that should be entertaining. So last word, though. First of all, and I mentioned to you today, Dan, about Des Bryant possibly coming back home. We saw him with Jerry Jones of all places at a Beyonce concert. What the hell is going on? But is there a possible return into Dallas by Dez, or what's the latest Dez? What do you think is going to happen here? Is it going to be soon? Is it going to drag out? What?
I think we're going to need to see an injury. It's not going to happen in Dallas. I don't see the Joneses swallowing their pride like that and bringing him back. I told you I thought it was a weird, probably an awkward moment that Dez ran into probably a drunk Jerry or a very heavily medicated Jerry out at the party Beyonce Jay-Z concert, but I don't look too much into it. If they're going to bring anybody back, bring back Tony from the booth. That's what I would really like to see, or even Jay Witt. Show me some how he can catch some ankle passes from Dak if he needs to. But he's going to wait for an injury, basically, I think, to happen.
So good segue there. The last thing I want to talk about before we close out this podcast is the rulings. We see rule changes every single year by the NFL to try to make the game even more safe or shore up some deficiencies or just satisfy some fan clamoring. which is a big part of it for me with the new rule catch, which I love. So we saw the most targeting penalties or roughing quarterback penalties in the league on week 1 since 2001 this past week. What did you think about that, Ryan? Did it seem to be overboard? Did you notice? Is it obvious intentionally that they're calling this or what?
You would have to be, I don't even know what word to say. I mean, you definitely notice it, and it's tough because there's a lot of layers to this onion known as the no contact helmet to helmet rule that the NFL has. I think they had good intentions in putting it in place because we saw players leading with their head. And I can date back to when I was 7 years old playing Pop Warner football, not to lead with your head. And these guys are professional, football athletes that they're trying to get the big hit. They're trying to get on SportsCenter's top 10 for the big hit. And
that's what football's about. You want to take the head off of the guy who has the ball. And a lot of times,
you do.
80% of the time, that's the quarterback.
You do, but things have changed. We know a lot more about head injuries than what we knew, 5, even 10 years ago. No, but I mean, the NFL is trying to cover their what.
Right.
And that's really what this comes down to. Roger Goodell's trying to save face for once in his life as a commissioner. He's trying to save face on an issue that he doesn't want to acknowledge it, but he's going to acknowledge it by bending and changing the rules. I think it's actually going to lead to more injuries, more pauses in action, because we're going to see more players overcompensate and try to make the big hit or try to, ease up, and it's not good for the game.
As far as the targeting stuff go low, which is not any better as far as injuries go.
There was a moment a couple years ago where T.J. Ward hit Rob Gronkowski, ended his season, tore his knee up, and that is just as dirty a hit as any helmet-to-helmet hit. Where's the rule change on that? I mean, these guys are human beings. They know what they're getting themselves into. Former Buffalo Bill Andre Reed said it best. He said, if I didn't know what I was getting into, I wouldn't have played. So that's that.
As a player, I would just think I would rather, if I'm an offensive player, a ball carrier, I would rather get hit in the shoulder, or upper body, or even, a head. Head has got to be accidental because no one's going to go for your head intentionally. That's not a good tackling form to begin with. But I want to be hit anywhere but my lower body, in my knees and my legs, because I think that's where the more injuries would come from. So I don't know. But what I did like, Dan Shaw, because we finally cleared up. I don't know if you guys noticed, maybe it was just subtle for some folks, but they are not overanalyzing these catches to death now. If it's not, just obviously, like he may have dropped the ball or bobbled the ball, they're not even paying it attention. First down, touchdown, let's move on and play ball. They're not even reviewing them now, and I love that. Did you notice that, Dan?
No, because Dez caught it. So.
Dez started it all. But I really do think the game will speed it up, because there were several times in several games this week when I was watching where I'm thinking, if this was last year, they're reviewing that. They're probably taking 4 minutes to review that catch when it should be just a catch. Let's move on and play football. So I did like that. But did you notice any more like roughing penalties or just things that the NFL are obviously trying to do this year to clean up, injuries or whatever?
Yeah. Roughing the passer, don't even get me started, because, if you hit the quarterback hard, clean but hard, but too hard, you're going to get called. And it always seems to happen, at the most inopportune times on a 3rd and long where the defense is about to get off the field and some stupid roughing the passer penalty comes. But yeah, each of the games that I was watching, Dallas got hit with it twice, both on 3rd downs that would have gotten Carolina off the field. One led to what was the winning touchdown. Roughing the passer is one that gets me every time. I just hate that personal foul penalties like this are affecting the game so much.
And it seems to only be getting worse. So, but as any other NFL season goes, even NBA season, anytime rule changes are like this are made to dramatically impacts, the first week or so of play, then they start trending down. You'll see this kind of fade a little bit, I believe. Not completely, but we're not going to regress as far as this goes. So you're not going to see them be able to whack the quarterbacks anymore. But I think you're going to see a slack off as the season goes on. Hopefully, we'll see. I'm not in favor of more flags and more stoppage of play. It's football. It is a physical, violent game. As long as they play football, it's going to be that way. So thanks for joining us. This is My Fantasy Podcast. We're back. It is football season. Join us for the next podcast where we do rapid fire answering your mailbag question. I'm going to open up a big mailbag question segment because you guys have been just stuffing the bag for the last month or so. So now that football season is here, we're going to have to answer some of them and break down fantasy scenarios and answer what you want to talk about. So we'll do that. So check out that podcast coming up in just a matter of days over the weekend before week 2 of the NFL. Ryan Thomas, join us for that, man. I want your input. You'll help us answer some of these questions, right?
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll look forward to that from Ryan Thomas and my co-host Dan Chalk. I am Brandon Reed. Thanks for watching. Until next time, see you later. Peace. All righty. Was that long?
Yeah, I think so. A little bit.
What time is it? 6:26. I don't know what time we started. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, damn, I cannot believe
it's 6:40, I think. 6:40, yeah. Is it?
So that probably went 45, 50 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll do this one quick. I didn't write a whole lot on these questions.
Yeah, we can just kind of answer, and we don't have to go into huge detail. I mean, you can, but.
Okay. Ready if you guys are.
Yep. Ready.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. It's another My Fantasy Podcast on MyFantasySportsTalk.com. We're going to call this one the Mailbag Show. It is week 2 of the NFL, and we've got a lot of questions submitted. Dan, I know I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. You've been filtering through questions. Obviously, a lot has hit the mailbag.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome as many questions every single week, and now that fantasy season has kicked off, I think this is the time that our inbox gets stuffed full of questions. So enlighten us. If you want to bring in some fun to the questions, that'll get you noticed a little bit more. But we're just going to rapid fire today, I think, because we have so many, and we just want to get through as many as we can to help you with your lineups in week 2.
That's right. And now for My Fantasy Sports Talk, we just play really for bragging rights. But a lot of these guys got money on the line, so they're panicking. They're like, I need your help. I need your advice. So we got a triple threat for you today. It'd be myself, Dan Chalk, and of course, Ryan Thomas is here from Buffalo. He's done with the Buffalo Bills season, so he's just totally focusing on fantasy football now, which is good for you guys at home because he's gonna give you the utmost attention to each and every single one of these questions because I heard Baltimore just scored again.
Oh man, I can't say I'm done with the Buffalo Bills season. They're my ride or die team.
We got the throwback on too.
Yeah, I got the throwback threads on from the 1990s. Thurman Thomas, the all-purpose running back of his day. But there were a few other good ones too. Emmitt Smith, Dan, we'll throw him out there too. But nevertheless, I'm definitely not done with this football season yet, and I'm ready to embrace the win column this week, week 2. That's what I did not get last week.
For the Bills or for your fantasy team? I'm confused.
Both.
Okay.
Both for sure. That was what I was alluding to. Both.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry to dish you here on the live podcast. Then, if the folks just thought you were a loser and just one or the other, not both, then I clarified that for everyone at home.
Week 1 was rough. Week 1 was rough to me.
It was rough. It was rough. As we mentioned on a previous podcast, we did kind of recapping week one. Is all three of our teams lost, guys. Tennessee Titans didn't look good. I got no faith in them. Ryan's Buffalo Bills just got smashed by Baltimore, and Dan's Dallas Cowboys just didn't do anything. And they got a late score. Other than that, they just didn't do anything. So a rough week as far as real football goes for the trio here on My Fantasy Podcast. But let's get into this fantasy mailbag and answer some of your questions. And right off the top, we got to start with Nick Pertins, which a quick update in our fantasy baseball league. It looks like me and Dan Shaw are about to come like this for this fantasy baseball championship, and I can't wait. I'm more hyped up than Bart Scott. I cannot wait for this. So I am destroying the number one seed. Jason Weeks, you had a good season. I don't know what happened, but you get on. You're out of there. And Dan Schalk is finally taking some vengeance over getting fleeced in that Shohei Ohtani trade from the Pertins. Well, maybe it worked out okay for you, Dan. He's doing okay with the bat. But Dan is seeking vengeance on Nick Pertins, and I think we're going to meet for the title. It's going to be big fun.
Yeah, and just refresh my memory, Brandon. Once I beat you in this baseball league, it's a 3-1 title count in favor of me. Is that's accurate, right?
Ours tied up.
Right, 3-1. Yeah,
it's going to be hard for you to beat the leading scorer in the fantasy baseball league
by like 98 points.
Oh, it's more than that. It's more than that.
Whoopty. Yeah. Well, I mean,
okay. I'm a little concerned because Dan Schalk I think he knows. I'm not going to publicly address it or give Dan Schalk hints, but he kind of knows what I've been doing and what my strategy is. It works for some, it doesn't work for others. But so, you know, and plus Dan lives on the East Coast. That's all I'm going to say. I live in the Central Time Zone. So a little bit of advantage there. So we'll see what happens next week in the championship.
Set your alarm every morning.
It's going to have to be like at 2 o'clock to get up. And, well, okay. But anyway, good luck to myself or Dan, because one of us is going to take home the title, which is amazing. It is amazing. So how many title games does this make for us, Dan? 3. Will this be our third title game actually playing in over all 3 sports, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. So you beat me in football.
So 2 full years of everything, and we've played in the title game in each sport, 3 sports at least once, half the time.
Yeah, and we've always represented, whether it's, you know, we've matched up together, but we've always, I think, represented, except baseball last year. Susan Bianco, she crushed our dreams. But
yeah, we both got bounced by fans.
Yeah. Domination. That's why you listen to this podcast. You get good fantasy advice. And we bring Ryan along, too.
Hey, get me in on this. Get me in on this fantasy baseball league. I love baseball, man.
You should have participated in the baseball league, because it seems like football just ain't your thing right now. I mean, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to go.
Baseball. I'm in the semis in my league, and I'm playing my dad, who bumped me out last year, first round or semis, coming off the bye, first seed. I got bumped out by the 6th seed. Here we are again. So far, I'm winning, but not by much.
That's going to make Thanksgiving pretty interesting for you.
Yeah.
So, all right, but let's get into it. Our guy, Nick Pertins, throwing in and chiming in with the first question. Sup, fellas? I own that L in the Fantasy Football League, but I want Dan to know Brandon is my favorite host. I can handle a week 1 loss in fantasy football, but Dan's doing me dirty in the baseball league. And to think you were going to be Colton's grandfather. Just kidding. Couldn't let a Cowboys fan into my family like that. I kid. Seriously, should I be worried about Kenyon Drake? I really thought he would be a top 10 guy. From Nick Pertins. And congratulations on the birth. We're finally here. Colton Pertins. And I hope Nick, Judy is doing it well, Nick. So just congratulations to your family there, man. Hope everything is going good. But I left this blank because this is really between you and Nick, Dan, revolving that trade around David Johnson. So I wasn't real high on Kenyon Drake to begin with. Nick says he'd be a top 10 guy. I didn't have him quite in the top 10, maybe top 15 to 18. I just never was really high. I'm not very high on Miami, period. So that's just me. But what do you think? Should Nick be worried about the Kenyon Drake situation?
Yeah, I mean, just based on how much Frank Gore was on the field in week 1, I mean, weather conditions may have played a factor, you know, especially with all those delays. Maybe you don't want to, pound a guy too much when you think another delay is happening. I don't exactly know. It's kind of
in Tennessee not doing anything. Why force the issue? Run everybody.
Yeah. So, it did concern me a little bit. I mean, but Drake was still, he got 14 carries. He had 4 targets in the receiving game, caught 3 of them. So I think he's still going to get you, 15 to 20 touches a game. It's what he does with those. And obviously conditions weren't great on Sunday. But he was decent. He wasn't terrible. And you never know with Frank Gore. He's always been a workhorse, reliable, durable. But he's in his 30s, so he's an injury away, from putting on Depends on Sundays instead of suiting up. So I don't think Kenyon Drake's a top 10 guy. That's one of the reasons why I was trading him to you, Nick. I appreciate that. But I think he's a solid player. He's a solid RB2 to have, especially in a 14-team league. Now, I think your problem, Nick, is you're pairing him with Alex Collins, who is another RB2. So you essentially have RB2s riddled in your lineup, and you don't have that one superstar guy, which might end up hurting you. I can say that now,
you draft
well, you didn't. Guy from you. But.
Yeah, he didn't draft that guy, but he had that guy. I don't know why he was so high on trading David Johnson. Now, I kind of agree with some of Nick's points about the Arizona Cardinals period this year. I had several opportunities, at least 2. I'm playing in 3 leagues, 2 opportunities I had. I had the first pick in our league, and I had the 4th pick in another league, and I passed David Johnson up both times. I went for Ezekiel Elliott in one, and, of course, I went with Todd Gurley in our league. So, I mean, I'm kind of with Nick, but he's still – a producing superstar that you just can't get from second tier type guys. I thought Kenyon Drake, like I said, was probably 15 to 18 in that range. And I pulled up the lovely and handy myfantasysportstalk.com fantasy football guide, which is still available for just $1 in case you need it. I mean, there's great information in there, but you had him ranked 17, Dan. So right about what I thought.
Yes. Yeah, I think top 15 is where he's his upside is, but you're not going to get a top 10 guy, I don't think.
What do you think, Ryan? Kenyon Drake need to worry, or what do you think about the outlook for Kenyon Drake as opposed to Frank Gore and how that timeshare is going to actually play out over the course of the season?
Right. Well, right before week 1, when the projections are put out and you get a little bit of information on these teams. There was a article written in the Miami Herald about how Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore were going to split the carries, but it would lean towards Drake. So I thought, well, this is great. I'll go with the Kenyon Drake. They say 70-30 in terms of timeshare. I started him in my flex slot in my league, my league with my buddies that I've commissioned for the last 10 years. And I'm not doing that this week. This week I added James Conner, and James Conner will be in that spot in my flex slot, and Kenyon Drake is sitting my bench. It's a shame, too, because I thought that, Kenyon Drake was going to be a guy that I could rely on. I thought maybe by the end of the year he'd have, at least over 1,100, maybe to 1,200 yards, maybe 5 to 8 touchdowns. I thought Miami was very high on him. But I'm not going to dip my toes into timeshare waters this year. I told myself that before the season started. I want running backs that are going to get the touches, the David Johnsons, the Zekes, the Melvin Gordons.
That's what I said. It's so frustrating. Yeah. In situations like, say, the Detroit Lions over the last several years, is complete timeshares. Oakland's in that situation this year, too, after watching Monday night. I mean, everyone played. So, so frustrating.
I thought I wouldn't be in that situation in the MFST league with Denver. I thought Royce Freeman was the guy. He was the all-time leading rusher at his school at Oregon, and Philip Lindsay played really well last week. So that's something to monitor. It's almost as if timeshare situations kind of create themselves based on game flow and things of that nature. So Kenyon Drake, sorry, buddy, but you're sitting on my bench this week.
Well, and you mentioned something you saw in the preseason about a timeshare where that Drake may be getting the benefit of that. And you mentioned 70-30. I saw just the opposite. I saw that Frank Gore will be getting the majority of the carries, maybe even the RB1 there. So it was just, you don't know, He's kind of the model of consistency is Frank Gore, but he's a specific kind of runner. Kenyon Drake is a different kind of runner. But I mean, I don't know if you thought he was going to be a top 10 guy, Nick. I mean, I don't know. I would be a little bit concerned just basically because I'm not want to throw too many of my eggs in the Miami basket. But I'll tell you this. Casey Birch likes to make trades. See if you can sell Casey Birch on Kenny and Drake and just move them. Just move them completely. But thanks a lot, Nick. Appreciate the question. Hope everything is going good. We'll hear from you soon. I'm positive of that. Next question comes from Joey Kendall. Just talking about our guy, Philip Lindsay here. Philip Lindsay worth an ad, 12-man PPR league. Joey Kendall, yeah, he's the hottest free agent waiver wire pickup, I think, probably this week, period, in most leagues. And here's a actually ESPN fact for you to try to back that up. I think he's up like 42.8% as far as pickups in the last 2 days. He started at around 4% owned in ESPN leagues, and he's all the way up to 44, 45, something like that. It's probably climbing as we speak, but definitely Denver native. Dan talked about it earlier on the last podcast. So dream come true for Philip Lindsay. He's going to continue to get work. I think absolutely. Dan?
Yeah, I'll just say this. His nickname in college was the Tasmanian Devil. Pick him up.
There you go. But this is not even a question, though, right, Ryan? 12-man league. We're in a 14-man league. This is a 12-man PBR.
I would take any running back this week that showed case to be made as being a lead back in week one. If you got an open roster spot, if you have one extra tight end or one extra wide receiver or maybe a backup quarterback that you never plan on starting, use that roster spot on Philip Lindsay. Denver is one of those teams, man. They went from Terrell Davis. They had Mike Anderson, Clinton Portis. They've had this revolving door of running backs, and it's like every one of them is productive. It is the weirdest. It's good for them, but it's bad for fantasy owners.
Yep. No, I agree. I play in a work league with it's a Yahoo league with some of my coworkers, and they were sleeping. I picked Philip Lindsay up today at like 4:00. It caught me on a whim. Like, hey, let me check the waiver wire in this league and see what's going on. And a lot of guys are on there. Philip Lindsay's one of them. So, yeah, I picked him up. Forgot who I dropped. Cordell Patterson, maybe. I don't remember who I had. But anyway, yeah, he's definitely worth a pickup. If you still have that opportunity by the time you're hearing this and you haven't yet, Joey Kendall, then yes, I would say definitely worth it for sure. Because it's so early, you just don't know yet. But he's one of those guys like Ryan just mentioned. If you see flashes in week one, you might want to hang on to him just in case. You never know. Let's move on and talk about some receivers. This question comes from Don Beetle. Who do I start? Juju against KC or Kenny Stills versus the Jets in a PPR league? Dan, let me get your input on this.
I don't really like either guy. Juju is obviously the higher ranked guy, and he'll be the answer to this question. But I'm still not even sold on him being a solid wide receiver too in fantasy, despite his 100-yard performance. The question you have to worry about here is it's a PPR league. I don't think either guy is going to have a high volume of receptions. I'm a fan of Kenny Stills. I think he's Ryan Tannehill's main, at least deep threat. But I would probably start Juju in this contest, but I don't like either guy too much.
Ryan, what say you?
I have a curveball here. It is somewhat the answer to the question. I would go with Juju Smith-Schuster in this case, but there's a wide receiver out there that I like quite a bit. I believe his name is Geronimo Allison from Green Bay. I liked what I saw. You mentioned the Bears-Packers game. The primetime game. Was that Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken?
Right.
I really like him. I think that he's somebody that could be a wide receiver 2 in Green Bay. Randall Cobb is getting up there a little bit in age, and I don't know what his ownership percentage is right now. But he's somebody that, like I said, you got to look at not just who's on your roster, but you got to look at who's out there as well. Even though it's week one, if you see a guy in week one get a lot of targets, chances are he's going to continue to. And Aaron Rodgers is one of those quarterbacks that when he finds a receiver he likes to throw to, he sticks with him. You could ask Jordy Nelson about that.
Geronimo Allison was picked up today in our league by the Dr. DFS. I don't remember exactly who that is. Dan, do you remember the name attached to that?
Tom Poffenberger.
Poffenberger. Yes.
He's a smart guy. Smart guy.
But to Ryan's point, he's probably still out there because he's only gone up 7.5%. He's only owned and still, right as of right now in ESPN League, 17.3. If these numbers are accurate, as I'm looking at right now on ESPN. So I'm kind of with Ryan there. But as far as the specific question is with the Juju and Kenny Stills, is I'm going with Juju because Big Ben committed 5 turnovers himself, 6 turnovers for the game. He still managed to throw it 41 times, and Juju Smith-Schuster is clearly the number 2 receiver in Pittsburgh. So I'm going with that volume, just going with that straight up volume, where I believe Kenny Stills is more in that carousel rotation of like what you see in New Orleans with Drew Brees. You just never know which guy's going to pop it this week. Ted Ginn did good. I took some heat, Dan Schultz, wink, wink, about Ted Ginn. But I'm like, if he's the number 2 guy or even number 3 guy in an offense like New Orleans, he's going to have his weeks. You just don't know. So Kenny Stills is that guy that's going to frustrate you, but you would have a hard time inserting Kenny Stills into your lineup every single week. That's what I believe. So I think Kenny Stills just had his best game of the year. So I would go with Juju Smith-Schuster on that one. So let's move on. Next one comes from Jeff Allen. Who would you start? Brady on the road in Jacksonville or Luck against Washington? Dan, what do you think? The main thing when I thought about this is weather. This particular week, I believe weather probably will and should be nasty in both locations. So which guy do you trust? Brady, as great as he is against the Jacksonville great defense, or Andrew Luck, who threw it 53 times in this past week at Washington? Weather included. How you feel?
2 rules of fantasy football. You're going to get some knowledge from Dan.
Go with Tom Brady always. Don't bet against the Patriots.
All right. Two rules. Number 1, never own a Buffalo Bills player on your fantasy team. And number 2, if Tom Brady's playing, you start him. So Tom Brady.
Well, that makes it even against the Jacksonville defense.
I don't care who he's playing. You start Tom Brady. He's going to throw for 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars defense. Well, I mean, they'll get down to the 1-yard line, and instead of running it, he's just going to throw it. I mean, he's going to get his numbers. He's Tom Brady.
We already saw Gronk go off, and I'm thinking that during Sunday, like, oh, are you freaking kidding me? Gronkowski, the dude, as long as he's on the field, he's just a beast. Always the number 1 tight end, for sure. How many did he catch? 2 touchdowns? How many did Gronk get?
He had 1, and he was over 100. I know that.
He had like 12 or 13 targets or 15 targets or something crazy. It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
it's crazy. Go ahead, Ryan.
You got to go with Tom Brady. And to Dan's point, we go back into the Buffalo Bills archives of fantasy drafts. He threw a dig out at my Bills, so I'm going to throw him this one. Fred Jackson out of Coe College helped me win a league not once but twice as a member of the Buffalo Bills. We'll sidebar that. But
yeah, your 8-man leagues don't count.
No, it was 10. That was 10. It was a 10-1. And he wasn't drafted in either leagues. He was a pickups. That's good. But Tom Brady, I would say 100%. If you watched the trash-talking corner known as Jalen Ramsey, the then 40-year-old Tom Brady had Jalen Ramsey's hands on his knees. So he was wearing that defense down so bad in the playoffs. I would never, ever, ever bet against Tom Brady in any matchup. Start him if he's playing, as Dan said.
I'm going exact opposite, guys, because it's Jacksonville. It is probably going to be nasty conditions, and I think this is going to be – now, it's going to be a great game, and I'm not saying New England's going to lose, but I'm saying it's going to be a little bit tighter of a game. With Andrew Luck throwing 50 times on the Washington Redskins, I think he's going to produce better fantasy numbers. So, you got two on one there, so I'm not sure if that really helped you out, Jeff Allen, but that's just the way I feel about it. Andrew Luck's gonna throw that ball, man. He's gonna throw that ball, and I got a lot less confidence in the Redskins defense than I do the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think you'll probably see a little bit tighter and a more competitive game from New England and Jacksonville, and Washington will probably get up on Indianapolis there. So just something to consider. We'll see. Not a bad problem to have, I guess, but the weather is something to consider. Maybe check that as we get closer to game time as well, because it will affect things. Let's move on. The next one comes from Niels Dudson. Should I drop Lynch to pick up Steals? My running backs are Howard, Lewis, Hyde, and Lynch. My wide receivers are Brown, Green, Landry, Baldwin, and Jeffrey. So I'll answer this one from my perspective, real quick, guys, is hell no. Keep your running back depth. Did you just? If I'm reading this right, you got Antonio Brown, AJ Green, Jarvis Landry, Doug Baldwin, and Alshon Jeffrey, who will be coming back soon. No, you have aces as your receivers, and you need running back depth. So Lynch may be whatever he's going to be. He's a beast. He's a bruiser. He'll probably get touchdowns when he's playing. So I'm saying no, man. Keep your running back depth. Your receivers are pretty awesome, and you're going to have a hard time, as I mentioned before, even inserting Kenny Stills into your lineup every single week and feeling confident about it. Dan?
Yeah, you have the receivers. No reason to pick up another one, especially looking at your running backs. I mean, they're okay, but there's nothing phenomenal, and you would want the depth. So definitely keep what you got and leave Stills alone.
Ryan?
I would say do not drop Marshawn Lynch for Kenny Stills, but I would throw a curveball here, as I always do, and say maybe trade Marshawn Lynch to the number one Oakland Raiders fan in your league. I'm not high on Marshawn Lynch. I think he's a decent running back. Obviously, he's had some great years in the league, but his best years are behind him. And I worry about him a little bit. I think John Gruden wants to mix in Doug Martin into this offense and a little bit too. So, if he wants true running backs that he knows he's going to get touches from, Marshawn Lynch at 32 with a lot of wear and tear, I'm a little bit skeptical on that. So maybe trade Marshawn Lynch for a younger running back.
Very smart thinking, Ryan Thomas. And that's what I mentioned before about Oakland and their backfield. It's a committee because Doug Martin did get a lot of work, but so did Jalen Richard.
Right.
So, man, it's just a mess right now. But only thing about Marshawn is he's a bruiser, and in certain situations, he's going to get the ball. And it's probably more likely out of all those three running backs I just named that he's probably more likely to get the touchdowns, definitely in goal line situations, if he stays healthy and stays through the whole year. But, yeah, from your receivers, like Dan said, Niles, no, or you're good, man. You're good. Don't shake it up for Kenny Stills. Don't do that. The next one comes from Jazzy Levi. I don't know. That's a great name, Jazzy Levi. Is that a new brand of jeans or something? I don't know, but I like it. I like it. So what does he want to talk about? He wants to say, what do y'all think about this trade? I give up David Johnson, Jordan Reed. I get Devontae Freeman, Adrian Peterson, and Jimmy Graham. It is a PPR league. Now, that's tough only because AP shocked me this past week. Dan will say right off the top that was a fluke and you're out on AP. But he shocked me because he carried it 26 times. I'm like, what? He carried it 26 times. And look, physically, we talked about this on the MFST message board Sunday, I believe. But to me, I'm not saying he looked great as in, top 10 stud, but he looked good physically for his age, and carrying it 26 times, he looked like he physically is ready to play football this season and just a physical freak. So I was satisfied with that and a little bit shocked by that. But you need to consider your depth, I guess, is what I'm saying, Jazzy. And but I'm not crazy about losing David Johnson, and I'm not sold on Atlanta's offensive stability. I think they've got issues to work out in Atlanta on the offensive play calling side of the ball. AP and his reliability at the age 53, that concerns me. And Jimmy Graham, just not sure about his volume this year. I'm just not sure about it. So I don't know, Dan. What do you think? I'm not sure that's really worth it. Too much risk to give up David Johnson in that particular scenario. Although there is some depth you're getting if you need it.
Yeah, you're getting garbage. AP is garbage and a half. He should have been recycled a year and a half ago. So don't do this trade. Devontae Freeman, I don't even think he's the best back in Atlanta. So I
Mike Coleman was getting as many carries as Freeman.
Yeah, and Jimmy Graham, the Packers haven't had they've had one top 10 tight end since 2006. Jimmy Graham's nothing. They don't utilize the tight end enough in the Green Bay offense. Keep DJ.
There you go. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, this one goes out to our big time listener, Nick Pertins. Unlike Nick Pertins, me personally, I would not trade David Johnson for much of anything, unless I knew I was getting a equal RB1. If I was maybe, let's say, a Dallas Cowboys fan and they really wanted Ezekiel Elliott on my fantasy team, or if I was a big LA Rams fan and I wanted Todd Gurley on my fantasy team, I wouldn't trade David Johnson unless I was getting one of those guys back. And in this case, he's not getting any of those guys back. It was a package trade, but not a good return, not a good enough return for a running back that I think could put up, somewhere between 13 to 1,500 rushing yards, receiving yards, could put up 300 to 400 if he's healthy.
There we go. So risky trade. We're saying don't do it. Not for those guys. Let's move on. Next question comes from Josh Jones. With Baldwin out for multiple weeks, who do you like better, Brandon Marshall or Tyler Lockett? So a receiving core from the Seattle Seahawks question here. To me, it's easy. It's Lockett. He's the more explosive player. He's the bigger downfield threat. Plain and simple. That's just it to me. Tyler Lockett over an aging Brandon Marshall. Dan?
We don't agree on a lot, Brandon, but we agree on this one. Tyler Lockett is the answer. I think you saw his capabilities on Sunday. He can always get you that 75-yard touchdown when you're not expecting it. And Marshall's nice, but he's aging. I would tend to think that Brandon Marshall on the Seahawks is going to be the Brandon Marshall we saw last year with the Giants rather than with the Bears or the Broncos of years past.
Yep, 2 for 2. Ryan, you going to make it 3 for 3?
I would make it 3 for 3. One thing with Tyler Lockett, and I'm not too sure on Seattle's depth chart in terms of their kick return or punt return game, but I don't know if this guy has return yards in his fantasy league, and the new kickoff rule has kind of somewhat nullified that. But if there was any guy that I wanted on my team, if he is kicking, returning kickoffs, that would be Tyler Lockett. The guy is a great returner, and now he's evolving as a wide receiver. I think Russell Wilson trusts him. And this Seattle offense is kind of Russell Wilson's to take the reins of, and I think Tyler Lockett's going to be a big part of that as well.
All right, so all three of us 100% agree on that. Tyler Lockett is the guy. All right, last question from Evan Springer. I want to start Sam Darnold over Deshaun Watson. Am I crazy? Yeah, you crazy, Evan. Look, Watson had the worst game he's probably going to have all year this past Sunday at New England. You're talking to a Deshaun Watson fantasy owner. I went out and grabbed him in the 5th round, I believe. Someone I totally believed in after picking him up last year, that if he is healthy, he's going to be it's just the bigger upside. And that's what it boils down to me. Deshaun Watson has the bigger upside, definitely over Sam Darnold as far as fantasy points go. He had a horrible game and almost matched Sam Darnold in a blowout this week as far as fantasy points in our league goes. I think the upside, like I said, is greater. Deshaun Watson is going to be playing Tennessee at Tennessee. Dan thinks Tennessee is going to has sneaky good defense this year. I'm not so sure. I think Tennessee's going to fall apart. Sorry, Titans fans. I just don't see it, and I'm not feeling it this year. I feel a little bit greater about Deshaun being okay at Tennessee than I do Sam Darnold in his second ever NFL game playing against Miami. That's just me, but no way. The upside is what I just can't do this. I can't do it. Deshaun Watson over Sam Darnold. Dan?
Evan Springer, listen to me, bud. Week 2, Sam Darnold will score more fantasy points than Deshaun Watson. You're not crazy. Do it. I would recommend doing it. And Darnold is he's gonna have more fantasy points. Book it right now. Mark it down when you read this. And if you do start Darnold, let me know. Because if Darnold doesn't score as many points as Watson, Brandon will give you $5.
Sure. I saw Ryan Tannehill in the rain go 20 of 28 against Tennessee. I'm not buying their defense. I'm not buying this team this year. Deshaun is going to bounce back. He had a worst game he just had all year. I promise you that. 11 fantasy points. That will not continue. Ryan, so it's up to you to break this tie.
I would go with Deshaun Watson. He's a guy that I own in a 2-quarterback league. But it's funny that this is the question because Sam Darnold is one of my other quarterbacks in that league. So it's tough. I think you definitely got a good backup with Sam Darnold. I think he could, as I mentioned earlier in the show and in another show that we recorded, that I think Sam Darnold is one of those rookies that could be Carson Wentz-esque. He could, be that lightning in a bottle type rookie where certain matchups he might blow up and in other matchups he might actually look like a rookie. Nonetheless, I would go with Deshaun Watson. He's a stud. I think the guy's going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback for many years to come.
And I get my biggest thing is the way I look at it is Deshaun Watson could get 40 fantasy points in a game. Sam Darnold is not. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying upside. Sam Darnold will have a great game having 25 points. Deshaun Watson have a great game having 40, 45. So upside. Wow factor. That's what I'm going for with Deshaun Watson. So that's it, guys. That is just the whole big mailbag segment. Appreciate all the questions you guys submitted. It's just week 1. We're getting into week 2. So it's going to be a long, long season. So keep submitting those questions. Love it. You help us out just as much as we help you out. So more we talk about it and hash things out, the better for everyone. Ryan Thomas, good luck to your Buffalo Bills this week. Good luck to your fantasy team this week. I'm rooting for you. Me and Dan got titles. I want you to come somewhere near the title picture just for your own sake. I mean, we have you on the podcast. We're investing in you. I want to see you shine.
Luck works in mysterious ways, and I got a few tricks up my sleeve, so we'll see what happens. Stay tuned.
Did you hear that, Dan Shaw? Ryan Thomas has got tricks up his sleeve. What could that be?
Up this sleeve and up this sleeve. Got some tricks up my sleeve. It is never over until it is over.
Well, it's good because we don't want to see him in a sleeveless shirt.
Yeah, you do. You kidding me? Look at these guns. Monty Pythons.
Representing the good days of Belo in the Thurman Thomas jersey. Tricks up the sleeve. That's the last one.
The best all-purpose running back of the 90s. Thurman Thomas.
It's stud. Buffalo Bills had it going on back in that day with Ed Reed, or not Ed Reed. I'm sorry, Andre Reed.
Andre Reed, yeah.
Yeah, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas. Who was the tight end? Who was the
Keith McKellar and Pete Metzler.
Metzler, yes.
Yep.
Tecmo Bowl. I don't know if you guys even know what that is, but yep. Okay, so. Buffalo Bills, good luck to you. So we'll keep Ryan Thomas. Hey, Dan, good luck to your Dallas Cowboys too. I mean, who y'all got this week? I forgot.
Giants Sunday night.
That's right.
Dan, I got a question for you. Lightning round. Who would you rather have, Dak Prescott or Josh Allen?
Dak Prescott.
Okay, all right. I thought it.
You're talking fantasy, right? Or real life?
No, I'm talking real life.
Real life, probably Josh Allen actually, but. I think Josh Allen's career is probably going to get ruined by the Bills pushing him out as a rookie. I really do. I think they're going to ruin him. So it's a catch-22 there.
I have that same fear.
Yep, that's the thing. I just hope you guys don't turn on Josh Allen real quickly when things don't. Your expectations have to be, you have to have realistic expectations to know what the season's going to hold, and don't let losses stack up on in amount to weight on the shoulders of this young kid. Right. Look ahead to 2019, or at least going forward in the future. So. Keep submitting the mailbag questions. We'll keep answering. We appreciate it each and every week. For Ryan Thomas, my co-host Dan Schalk, I am Brandon Reed. See you next time, podcast peeps. Later. Peace.